1979. Kids start disappearing across Atlanta. Then, young men, mostly black boys, mostly teenagers, their bodies turn up later, in rivers, in wooded areas, places nobody would think to look until somebody does. By 1981, the death toll climbs past 24, 29 kids, missing or dead. The city is living in a state of panic. Parents walking their children to school and back every single day. Curfews, search parties combing through creek beds and vacant lots, a reward fund climbing into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And still, nothing. No suspect. No pattern anyone can prove. Just bodies and grief, piling up faster than answers. So, police set up stakeouts, along the rivers, along the bridges, waiting, in the dark, for something to happen. One night in May 1981, something does. Officers stationed near the James Jackson Parkway Bridge hear a splash. Under the bridge, over the Chattahoochee River. A car is seen driving away. They stop it. Question the driver. Let him go. 2 days later, a body surfaces in that same river. About a mile downstream, his name was Nathaniel Cater, the driver of that car, 23 years old, a local music promoter with big talk and bigger ambitions. His name was Wayne Williams. He's not arrested, not that night, not for weeks, but from that splash forward, he's the only name on anyone's list. Here's the problem investigators run into almost immediately. A splash isn't a murder weapon. A car driving away from a bridge isn't a confession. Nobody actually saw Williams kill anyone. So what do you build a case on when you've got nothing but a sound and a suspicion? You go small, smaller than a fingerprint, smaller than a footprint, fiber, threads pulled off skin and clothing. The kind of thing that transfers without anyone noticing every time a person sits on a couch or lies down on a carpet or climbs into the backseat of a car. And here's what makes investigators sit up. These fibers keep showing up. Body after body, yellow-green nylon fibers, violet acetate fibers, different victims, different weeks, sometimes different months apart, all carrying some version of the exact same trace, a common source, somewhere in this city. So once Williams becomes a suspect, police move fast. A search warrant. His house, searched top to bottom. And there it is. Bedroom carpet, yellow-green, matching, closely, the fibers already pulled from multiple victims. Then his car. More matches. Even his dog's hair turns up on some of the bodies. It feels like the case just cracked itself open. But here's the uncomfortable truth about carpet. Millions of homes have carpet. Millions of cars have carpet seats. A single fiber match on its own proves almost nothing. Any decent defense attorney could stand up in front of a jury and make that fact sound completely reasonable. Because it is. So investigators ask a harder question. Not does this match, but how rare is this match actually? They trace the exact carpet back to its manufacturer, a company called West Point Pepperell, and they catch a break. A bad one for Williams. This specific carpet was only produced for about a single year, sold in a limited run, distributed mostly through the South. Using the company's own sales figures, investigators calculate something precise. Out of every home in Atlanta, how many could plausibly have this exact carpet on the floor, right now? The number comes back, roughly 1 in 7,792. That's fiber number 1. Now they run the same process for fibers pulled from inside Williams's car. Match the carpet to the specific make and model. Cross-reference it against dealership records and manufacturing runs. Fiber number 2, roughly 1 in 3,828. On their own, both numbers sound impressive. Neither one alone is enough to convict a man of murder. But investigators don't stop at 2 separate numbers. They ask one more question, the one that actually matters. What are the odds that a single victim, specifically Nathaniel Cater, picked up both of these fiber types completely by random chance from somewhere other than Williams's house and Williams's car? To answer that, you don't add the numbers together. You multiply them. 1 in 7,792, multiplied by 1 in 3,828. The result? Roughly 1 in 29,827,776. Almost 30 million to 1. For one single victim, matched against one single suspect. And Cater isn't an isolated case. He's one piece in a much larger picture. Investigators keep pulling threads, literally, fiber after fiber, 28 separate fiber types, eventually tying Williams to victim after victim across the case. No 2 matches identical. But the pattern holding, body after body, month after month. Here's why that number keeps climbing in importance. One coincidence by itself is just a coincidence. It happens to people constantly for no sinister reason at all, but 28 coincidences, all pointing back to the exact same house, the exact same car, the exact same man. At some point, calling that a coincidence stops being reasonable and starts being denial. Prosecutors know exactly what they're holding, they also know something else, just as important. A jury isn't a room full of statisticians. A number like 1 in 29 million can sound devastating, or it can sound like meaningless noise, depending entirely on how it's explained. So they don't just read the statistic out loud and hope it lands. They build the entire case around it, visually, piece by piece, over 40 charts, more than 350 photographs, walking the jury through fiber type after fiber type, match after match, source after source, slowly, methodically, almost repetitively, on purpose. Because the repetition is the actual argument. 1 match is a fluke, 2 is a stretch. 28, laid out side by side, in chart after chart, stops looking like anything except a pattern with a name attached to it. In 1982, the jury delivers its verdict. Wayne Williams, guilty of murder. 2 victims specifically named in the charges, Nathaniel Cater, Jimmy Ray Payne, 2 life sentences. Investigators believed at the time that Williams was responsible for far more than 2 deaths, possibly connected to over a dozen of the Atlanta killings. Most of those cases never went to trial. The fiber evidence was overwhelming for Cater and Payne specifically. For the others, it simply wasn't strong enough on its own to clear the bar the law demands. Williams has maintained his innocence every year since, and the case hasn't fully closed, even decades later. In recent years, several of the other Atlanta child murders were formally reopened. Old evidence, run back through modern DNA testing, checking whether the original conclusions still hold up under tools that didn't exist back in 1981. Which brings up the same question that keeps resurfacing anytime numbers get treated as proof. A statistic can tell you something is extremely unlikely to be random chance. It cannot, by itself, tell you exactly what happened or hand you a signed confession. Wayne Williams was convicted almost entirely on fiber, and the math built around it. Not a murder weapon, not an eyewitness to a killing, not a confession, just threads thin enough to miss with the naked eye, and a probability calculation precise enough to convince 12 strangers sitting in a courtroom that 30 million to 1 wasn't a coincidence anymore. Math didn't see the crime happen. Math never does. But sometimes math is the only thing patient enough, quiet enough, to notice the one pattern that everybody else already walked straight past.